Hey everybody, welcome to the Sootopolis City League. My name is Mabel Rourke. I am back on the mic with Kana. It has only been a few short weeks since we last got to cast together, and we have what I think is going to be a really interesting Spike Myth Cup match for our first match of the day.
Yeah, it's always interesting to cast over some Spike Myth, and it's going to be a bit of fresh air given to what we usually cast together. And it's gonna be a bit fun to kind of see what is going back and forth in this format. I haven't really caught up with it much. I kind of came so used to having Dynamax that I'm getting a bit shaky without having it now. So it'll be nice to kind of have a catch up with it and see what I can maybe use in the future myself, and also see what these teams are going to be kind of scout out for the future tournament as well.
Yeah, and speaking of these teams, right, we currently are having the Aloha Araquanids and the Sunsteel Strikers for our first match of the day. Currently, as you can see on the screen, it is 2 for Aloha Araquanids and 3 for Sunsteel Strikers. So if Sunsteel Strikers are, able to get to the win today, that's going to put them, I think, in a really, really good position. I think at this point, right, if you're trying to get those ties at bare minimum, then you at least know if you get this one win, then you've at least secured a tie, and you'll need maybe at least one more just to get the full secure win over Aloha Araquanids. And of course, every single point matters, especially as we continue to lead in. Sunsteel currently 2-0-1, whereas Aloha Araquanids are 1-0-2. So Aloha Araquanids really need to pull a win out here just to kind of keep themselves in the game in a league that can get pretty close.
Yeah, and they're going to want to take it, as quick as they possibly can, because the more and more the Sunsteel Strikers tick up those wins, the slower the pace is going to be, and the less likely they are going to catch up with that draw. But maybe hopefully we can kind of use the knowledge and nature of what teams are being used, kind of predetermine what could come from it, and then just use every bit of knowledge they have and be like, hey, this is what's being used, this is what we can counter with, go for that best possible outcome. If we do see the teams on the screen, and I'm liking what I'm seeing from Atmosphere, having something very similar to what I used to play back in 2018, and then Ray kind of bring it up with a team that has a few funky Pokemon on it, which I've hoping they have a really good cohesion, given that they look very fragile but also very strong.
Yeah, it's a little bit of an interesting thing to look at, right? Because Atmosphere, like you said, has a lot of these Pokemon that seem pretty familiar to us. That Tapu Koko. The Landorus Incarnate is something we saw quite a lot more probably in the No Dynamax format about a year ago. Porygon 2, Incineroar, Araquanid, and Amoonguss. Whereas for Ray, they're running Serena, Tapu Fini, Incineroar, Mienshao, Spectrier, and Regieleki. And Regieleki is probably loving the fact that it can see that Tapu Koko on the other side of the field. Maybe try and take advantage of that electric terrain. Something that's interesting to me as well is there are 2 wide guard users on both of these teams, right? So you have the Araquanid and then you have the Mienshao. Both of those Pokemon really do love having that wide guard opportunity, and that's going to be huge against a Pokemon like Spectrier. I think on the opposite side, or no, sorry, not like Spectrier, but it's going to be huge against something like the Regieleki with something like an Electro Web maybe, that may try and slow down the Pokemon on Atmosphere's side if need be. But I think, Ray probably wants to go pretty quick here. So I think Atmosphere probably has the opportunity to try and slow things down. Araquanid's a great Trick Room Pokemon. Most of their team looks really, really good in Trick Room.
Yeah, it does look very good in Trick Room, but of course it does also have utilities. That means it can work outside that Trick Room with those very fast Tapu Koko and Landorus. Tapu Koko can easily go for its own Electro Webs. That Mienshao isn't there, get some speed drops all around, and then the rest of the team can kind of just go at the pace they want to. Maybe they'll be a little bit faster, or they'll have that time over time to catch up when they need to. Of course, Arachnid is fairly bulky, and most of these Pokemon, even with Regieleki's strong stats, it might not be too much to get through that Arachnid if it has got enough bulk in its special defense, which is already really naturally high.
Yeah, and I mean, at this point, right, if there's a lot of fake out on both of these teams, Mienshao and Incineroar on Ray's side give you the opportunity for fake out, especially against the fact that Atmosphere probably, if they wanted to bring in something like that Incineroar, it may be stopped by the Serena. Serena loving to play those mind games with that Queenly Majesty ability does make it so that setup can be a little bit less secure. You can't go for a fake out Trick Room and just have the easy, comfy setup that Porygon 2 is typically so used to having. Unless there's a taunt hidden somewhere, maybe on Ray's side of the field, though, I think it's going to be hard for them to maybe stop that Trick Room, and they may just have to kind of stall it out and maybe time it out if need be, because, I mean, it becomes a little bit more complicated, I think, in terms of that lead. But if you need to get that speed advantage against those fast Pokemon like Regieleki and Spectrier, then that's something you have to be pretty mindful of, especially in the lead up of these first few turns, because they're going to be able to move quickly and be pretty strong. Mienshao and Spectrier, though, going to be the lead for Rey here, so a great opportunity for some wide guard, possibly fake out, especially Tapu Koko and the Landorus Therian on Atmosphere side of the field.
Yeah, a great anti-intimidate lead there for Rey, and also very anti-fake out. So if an Incineroar did come for that fake out trick room, you know, whatever happened would have been attacking it. Mienshao having its ability in inner focus, meaning it also doesn't get the intimidate drop, would have been really nice to maybe catch off a Porygon 2 with strong close combat. Sometimes Incineroar will drop that close combat, but you know, we'll have to see what goes from there, as the fake out does come out alongside that nasty plot, so that instant presence damage coming out from Rey, from one of the best special attackers in this format, I believe. And Tapu Koko can't slow it down, and Landorus is the only thing that can attack, and these Pokemon, they're going to like taking it, because even if they drop, they get a nice switch in there. Spectre has got that boost, which is going to put it forward.
Something that's interesting, right, is this shows that the Spectrier is not running Focus Sash. Mienshao is one of the other Pokemon that love to carry it, and that means that the Spectrier is not running something like Choice Specs either, or any sort of choice item, right? So, and it's not running something like Assault Vest. So now you may just have to think that it may be holding something like that Spell Tag to boost those Ghost Power moves. Landorus going for Protect here as well. Mienshao using Feint. If this goes through Protect on the Landorus, that is a great way to get some extra damage off. Shadow Ball from the Spectrier into that Landorus as well. A really heads-up play by Rey, thanks to that nasty plot as well. You've already given yourself a Grim Neigh boost, and Rey already looking pretty comfortable here.
Yeah, Rey looking amazingly comfortable, getting that call on where the Protect was going, and getting rid of what is possibly the most offensive presence in terms of the speed aspect of the team that Atmosphere can carry. Of course, it does give you that little bit of a speed drop in return from that Tapu Koko, but given that Landorus is gone, you have a really fast Pokemon already in the Spectrier, and the rest of Atmosphere's team is going to be pretty slow. You can kind of rest assured that those special attack boosts are going to keep on rolling, because maybe there could be a bit of bulk invested on the Spectrier because it has got nasty plot. As you see Incineroar coming in, which isn't really going to bother the Tapu Koko overly, because it's normally a special attack or a support Pokemon. You're posing Incineroar coming in as well. Again, it's just going to be intimidating a special attacker in the Spectrier, and yes, it has dark type moves that can maybe target down this Spectrier and give it a bit of a run for its money, given it hasn't got a Focus Sash, but we could see a cheeky Mud Shot coming out and just getting that knockout with these special attack boosts that are coming, and then Tapu Koko can kind of deal with the Incineroar, maybe Volt Switches or whatever it could choose to go for.
Yeah, the Incineroar on Rey's side, it seemed like it got the Intimidate off first. That may have just been a switching thing, so it may still have that faster fake out onto the opposing Incineroar. Tapu Koko going to switch out here, bring in that Porygon 2, who would love to take something like a Shadow Ball. Download as well, going to help boost up that attack, which is kind of interesting to have, I guess. But a Protect from the Spectrier this turn means that it's not going to be taking any extra damage. Parting Shot from the Incineroar into the Incineroar on Atmosphere side will lower that attack stat and allow for Rey to maybe get a little bit extra position to move around. However, you are now in a position where you can't exactly get a fake out on the next turn, and that kind of lets this Porygon sit pretty comfortably. Tapu Fini, though, I think is probably one of your better options, because now you've kind of put this Misty Surge on the field. You've made it so that maybe you can go for something like a Muddy Water, if that's kind of one of the moves you're carrying, try and get some damage off, maybe try and get some extra some accuracy drops as well. Throat Chop, though, into that Protected on the Spectrier, no damage this turn.
Yeah, no damage that turn, and it does allow both players to kind of set the pace and set the field they want to be. Porygon 2, looking at these two Pokemon, could easily go for that Trick Room we saw Atmosphere was hovering over, and just get the speed tiers set in their favor. The Shadow Ball, even with that Incineroar's Dark typing, did a chunk of damage, activating what we now know is a Citrus Berry. And Tapu Fini, you have to rely on maybe some Muddy Water accuracy drops to maybe stop a Parting Shot or a Throat Chop from targeting down into that Spectrier and giving it, lowering its special attacks to even risen, and the critical hit and the drop on the Porygon. So some good luck going on there. As the Fruit Chop comes out, unfortunately no drops or anything there, but given that Parting Shot last turn, it does not get the knockout, and the Thunderbolt is the choice of move that misses the Spectrier.
Oh, I love Muddy Water Vine games. They're horrible to play in, but they're so entertaining to watch. Not being able to get that Thunderbolt off means the Spectre is still on the field. Even with that speed drop, it was faster than the Incineroar. And another Another Shadow Ball is going to be enough to knock it out because it did 50%, and thanks to that Muddy Water damage, that means you get another Grenade boost right out of the gate. Even if you don't have a great way to hit something like this Porygon 2, if you go for something like a Nature's Madness, then you've already got it down to half. It can recover that HP back up. However, the problem is that it then cannot do anything on that turn besides recover. Calm Mind this turn. Rey has these fast Pokemon, but they are pretty bulky when you get that special attack and special defense boost as well. Trick Room going up this turn, I think Tapu Fini's probably pretty comfortable in this Trick Room environment, right? It's not exactly as fast, and at this point too, you've still got extra Pokemon in the back that you can send in and switch up this terrain, as this Tapu Koko is the last 2 Pokemon for Atmosphere. And even though you're changing the terrain to that Electric Surge, that can change pretty quickly, right? If you just get in, switch in your Incineroar, you have the opportunity for Fake Out maybe. You can Protect on that turn as well, and then you can still send your Tapu Fini back in.
Yeah, Tapu Fini's pivoting is going to be very crucial for this late game. It weakens the Thunderbolt from that the Porygon 2, and it reduces the damage it will be coming out from any moves that do come from that Incineroar, the Tapu Koko, sorry, as it does, chip down damage regardless of what it does. Incineroar coming in though is, as you said, going to allow the terrain to be reset and just get it down Intimidates, just in case there may be a Wild Charge hiding. Of course, Rey hasn't seen the full moveset of this Tapu Koko, and it just gives the Spectrier a bit of a safety net next turn. You could see a Fake Out coming through, as we see it does Protect though, just giving it a bit more time to live, as the Volt Switch comes out, does go into that slot, so a nice Protect there. And I do believe a Thunderbolt did go in that slot too, as we see a Forfeit being the option for Atmosphere, thinking Trick Room's going to end. These Pokemon are bulky and really high special attack, so I just leave them be and recalculate for the next games to come.
Something that's interesting to me is using Volt Switch, right, as your last turn. You only had 2 Pokemon left, so it's not like you were gonna get any sort of position change by doing that. So maybe that's a ploy to conceal information and not show exactly what type of moves you have on there, because Volt Switch is such a nice move to have that it really doesn't exactly matter how much damage you get off necessarily. It's just the opportunity to pivot. So I like that as a way to kind of conceal that information, and maybe just trying to say, I don't want to... I mean, at that point, though, you are allowing for that Spectrier to also sit and conceal information. Like you said, right, there is a possibility of some sort of ground type move, but it only revealed Shadow Ball, so then you still don't know if it has any great way to possibly hit your own Porygon, and then Porygon may be able to kind of hang out for the rest of the game if you can get rid of everything else but the Spectrier. I definitely make sense as to why you're not even switching out your Spectre. You had the 2 Grenade boosts. It definitely is something that I think when you're moving into this game too, if you want to set up this Trick Room, you need to do so in a way that allows for your Pokemon to truly take advantage of it, because Tapu Koko is not exactly a Pokemon that we associate with Trick Room all that often.
Yeah, it isn't often seen in that Trick Room. There have been some people who have been like, oh, I could just run a Quiet Edge Tapu Koko, but it's still not the slowest, and Atmosphere is going to have to find a way to find that balance of maybe going for Electro Webs outside of Trick Room to get the speed going, and also maybe just setting up Trick Room as quick as possible, and maybe having that Arachnid there to soak up those special hits with its really high special defense, and then get the ball rolling with its super strong water type attacks. It's going to hit really hard. Most of those Pokemon, even Tapu Fini, won't enjoy it given it's a water type, so you have to see what it is, the pattern that will be chosen there from Atmosphere. But we could also see Rey just read into that and go with another anti-Trick Room mode and just go off the bat even further, maybe reveal Torn or whatever that could be in the back for that team.
I did love that Mienshao getting that feint off. That's not exactly one of the more common moves in like the more Dynamax heavy formats that we saw, because at that point, right, it's not always the most useful, but it's great in these sorts of formats as well. And it also has the opportunity to run taunt. We saw the Fake Out and we saw the feint, right? So we didn't see a whole lot of what was hidden on there, but Mienshao has such an interesting move pool. It has Ally Switch, it's got taunt, it's got Wide Guard, it's got Rock Tomb as well to help slow other Pokemon down. It's kind of got all these really interesting support tech moves, and it's not a Pokemon we see all that often because it wants to hold Focus Sash, and Focus Sash is such an item that so many other Pokemon want to have, right? Even that Spectrier, I'm kind of assuming it's spell tag based on the damage that it did and the moves that it had, especially if it's trying to run a little bit bulkier, which definitely makes sense because it is just such a fast Pokemon, right? And getting those nasty plot boosts and then getting Grenade boosts, it makes you an absolute nightmare to deal with, especially when you don't get Parting Shotted at all.
Yeah, it is really annoying to deal with once it gets its ball rolling, and even if it doesn't get its ball rolling, its presence just means you have to bring something like the Incineroar or whatever dark type you have, try and cancel it out. in this sort of format where you haven't got Dynamax, the pace is set from that turn 1 really, where you can be like, okay, if they've got this Pokemon that can't be knocked out by Pokemon easily, then I have to kind of think, do I have something that can slow it down or reduce its stats or whatever you can do to deal with it. As we just see a repetition of game 1 in these leads. So maybe we could, now that Atmosphere knows that there is that feint that could come out, maybe they're going to be a bit more wary of when they protect and where they protect. Just go for straight out damage, just get rid of these Pokemon, make sure they are down and gone. Of course, Fake Out will stop that for a turn, which is a bit annoying because it just gives that nasty plot ability again. We just see the repeat turn 1. These Pokemon, they may be strong, but Spectria, once it gets going, that's that Fake Out is even stronger. And with Tapu Koko flinching, there's no speed drops, and the Earth Power coming out, will it do enough damage to get a knockout on the Spectria? It just misses as well. So Maeve, we're going to be in another situation where Spectria is fast, it's got the damage, and Mienshao can just start fainting things, or maybe even just switching out and letting Incineroar do bits too.
Well, I wonder at this point, right, if you call the feint and the protect and you just don't protect this turn and maybe just try and get some damage off and possibly get an Electro Web, it becomes like if you get this Electro Web with your Tapu Koko, right, then you get that knockout on the Spectrier already and it's off of the field and then you don't have to deal with it. Mienshao at this point is pretty comfortable at the moment. You haven't hit it with anything that's going to do enough damage, but I like the change of target. I like focusing down on that Spectrier because Mienshao hasn't shown a lot of offensive prowess. It's mostly just shown those support and those tech moves instead and tried to let Spectrier kind of be the highlight here. Lander is going to switch out though, and that is going to bring in the Porygon 2, meaning at this point you're not in danger of taking another Earth Power here. At least you've also got kind of the opportunity of maybe sending in another Pokemon to help Fake Out, but protect this turn from Spectrier, going to at least stop some damage from this Volt Switch that targeted straight in. So no Electro Web this turn. Mienshao able to go for a close combat into the Tapu Koko, though, did not call it into that Landorus to switch, but you are now getting those drops on your defense and special defense, which you're not going to love dealing with unless you can get your Mienshao out of there.
Yeah, Mienshao's not going to enjoy having those drops, but it is also going to kind of like them in a weird way because Mienshao, it does its job once it's done the Fake Out or the feint or the taunt or whatever it has to do. So getting rid of it and bringing something in the back that could maybe deal better with this Trick Room mode could be very useful for Rey. Of course, Mienshao, it could just start hitting into his Porygon 2. If Incineroar doesn't come in, then it's not getting intimidated. So Mienshao has a really hefty attack stat given how unpopular it has been over time. So I have to see if that is enough to get knocked out, or maybe if this Porygon 2 is EV to maybe live that, or just get a kill in return with these stat drops. And Tapu Koko able to just go for these spread moves to see it break sashes easily. If this Shadow Ball doesn't KO, that is, which it does, and that means that, no spread moves, no sashes broken. So Porygon 2 has to rely on maybe this Trick Room to start getting the pace going, or just outright damage and knock these Pokemon out before they do anything. As that close combat comes in, puts Porygon to the yellow, which is very scary for Atmosphere because it means, might start recovering and that's a turn wasted. As Trick Room does go up though, so if we have slow Pokemon in the back, it's going to be a bit more good news, but can these Pokemon bulk it out from where they are?
So one thing that's interesting, right, is that Porygon went for the Trick Room. It had the opportunity maybe to just try and get that knockout and go for a Trick Room on the next turn. If you know you're going to lose your Tapu Koko, is it better to just get the Trick Room on the following turn? You can send in your Amoonguss, go for a Rage Powder. Mienshao is holding something that is not Safety Goggles. Spectre, I'm assuming, is not holding Safety Goggles, not always the item that it wants to hold. So you could have gone for a Rage Powder and Trick Room the next turn. Could have at least maybe forced a close combat into the Amoonguss instead. I think at that point, right, because then you get the Spectrier off the field, you don't have to deal with it, you don't have to spend a turn dealing with it, and then you can have the opportunity to really utilize your Trick Room turns a little bit better, because at this point, too, if you knock out the Spectrier, you're probably going to assume there's a Tapu Fini in the back, which could go for something like a Nature's Madness into the Amoonguss, and just knock that damage down by a bunch. Spectrier is going to protect this turn, though, and it's already going to start stalling out some of your turns of Trick Room on this turn. Pollen Puff from the Amoonguss into that Spectrier is not going to do any damage thanks to that Protect. Porygon's Recover will go off, though, will help to regain some of this HP that it lost due to that close combat from the Mienshao on the prior turn, but it's most likely just going to take another one again from this Mienshao, who is now at -3 stages of special defense and defense. So at this point, even that Amoonguss, I think, could get a ton of damage off, but its Focus Sash is still intact, so it's still able to hang out.
Yeah, its Focus Sash being attacked is just what's making it a really threatening presence, because Atmosphere is now in that weird situation where they have to think, I can recover to bring back my HP, get myself into a point where I'm just stalling out my opponent. But at the same time, that is Trick Room turns being dwindled away every turn that happens, and Mian Xiao can just keep close combating, hope for a crit, hope for a high roll, or hope something happens and get the knockout. Mian Xiao is going to go for that switch, maybe just try and preserve its stats so it can come in later and do that over and over again. Incineroar, Intimidate isn't going to hit either of these things, with much effect. So we're going to see if there's going to be anything to maybe change the flow of play here. Maybe Incineroar's just there to be a bit of a slow Pokemon. So our Trick Room, this Tapu Fini comes in, of course, not really affecting the Sleep Powders or Spores because that was already negated by the Electric Train set up earlier by Tapu Koko, which is one of the things that players have to have that yo-yo with of like, if I have a Moongus and Koko, do I have to, what do I pick to go with? This Rage Killer comes out on that double switch, so no matter where that went, this Thunderbolt goes into the Fini, does some nice damage, but not nice enough to what it would have been in that Electric Train. And the turn is basically reset with Trick Room dwindling even more and these Pokemon just getting the stats back that they need.
Yeah, that Tapu Fini also restoring its HP with some leftovers there as well. I love that play from Rey just because at that point, right, they know that they're two fast Pokemon. They've already stalled out at least one turn of Trick Room. They've kind of done their jobs. You have one Grenade and a Nasty Plot boost on your Spectrier, but it doesn't really matter all too much here. Fake Out plus from the Incineroar, but a Pollen Puff from the Amoonguss into the Porygon 2 is going to heal up some of that damage. It's not going to be losing it nearly as quickly this turn, but Tapu Fini gets a free Calm Mind up this turn. It's not taking any extra damage. It's going to boost that special defense. It's going to make it really tough to deal with a stronger special attack stat as well. Again, you have opportunity to go for a Muddy Water and drop that accuracy on these Pokemon on the opposite side of the field, which truly was pretty pivotal in the end because it did not allow for Atmosphere to knock out that Spectrier when they really needed to. So I think at this point, right, Incineroar maybe has the opportunity to go for something else that can do a bunch of damage. You have an opportunity to Parting Shot, I think, into either of these Pokemon. Switch them out, bring the Mian Xiao back in. You have another opportunity for Fake Out and another Pokemon that's not going to get fully knocked out on this turn, most likely, unless Atmosphere goes for a double target. But I think if they double target, they'd be more inclined to double target into the Tapu Fini slot. But Amoonguss is just going to go for a Protect this turn.
Yeah, Amoonguss going for Protect is going to keep it from any Flare Blitzes or Taunts that could come out from this Incineroar, but given the state of the game right now, your Bug-type moves aren't doing much to Tapu Fini because it's got its Calm Mind boost, and it is a Fairy-type. Muddy Water coming out from the Tapu Fini as well is going to put the pressure on Atmosphere. Will we see any extra drops this time around? We don't see them, which is going to be a little bit of a good news for Atmosphere. But at the same time, Trick Room will be ending on this turn, and those Muddy Waters will be coming out faster. Those Pollen Puffs and those Spores will be going out after the attacks are enough, and accuracy is going to be a timer, and so is just the sheer power of Tapu Fini once it gets the ball rolling, because it's got that one special defense boost. What's stopping it from getting another one? Porygon 2 often has a little bit of offensive investment to catch out knockouts or get a bit of chip damage where it needs it. So this Fini could be built way ahead of the bulk needed to take those hits, and with the other two Pokemon that are super strong in the back, they can just knock out these Pokemon. We've seen them do it before. Then Rey can just sit comfortably and think, okay, get those accuracy drops, then play from there as another Muddy Water comes out, just misses knockout on the Porygon. There is an accuracy drop on the Porygon 2, so going to be a bit shaky there. This Flare Blitz comes out as well, likely going to grab this Amoonguss.
Yeah, great Flare Blitz there. Does get the knockout onto the Amoonguss. Going to knock Atmosphere down to their last two Pokemon. Porygon's got very little HP left, and that recoil damage really doesn't feel all that bad. This Thunderbolt from the Porygon 2 into this Tapu Fini, it's doing damage. It's consistently getting damage off, but it's not recovering when it needs to. And that means at this point, too, Atmosphere does not have a way to redirect some extra damage from that Porygon 2 to try and allow for a recover now that Amoonguss is off of the field. There wasn't something like a Pollen Puff either, which does make a lot of sense because you're most likely going to get knocked out anyway. Possibly, I think at this point, the Landorus has the great opportunity to go for a couple of super effective moves here. The Earth Power or the Sludge Bomb into either one of these two targets, I think, will be a really nice amount of damage, maybe enough to knock out either one, depending on the item that the Incineroar on the opposite side of the field is holding. But then you still send in the Mian Xiao, and then it can still go for a Fake Out and can go for a Feint again maybe later. And at that point too, I think at that point you have the Spectrier in the back who can also come in whenever something gets knocked out. It's going to be moving first. It can get the knockout as well. Earth Power from this Landorus into the Incineroar, though, is going to be enough to pick up that knockout onto the Incineroar, knock it out of the game. It's not going to be able to get an Intimidate off either, but Tapu Fini's Moonblast will at least go first and knock this Porygon 2 out of contention here and mean that this Tapu Fini is around for another turn with these leftover recoveries every single turn as well.
Yeah, that turn just played out really well there for Rey. Atmosphere had the opportunity to go for super effective into either of these Pokemon. Even with their special defense boost, I think at the HP that Tapu Fini was at, a Sludge Bomb could have maybe knocked it out given how powerful Landorus can be. But going for that Incineroar put them into a situation where Mienshao could just come in and get a Fake Out off, and Tapu Fini, it's got a special attack boost. It can go for those Muddy Waters. Yes, Muddy Water can miss, and yes, protecting then increases that mathematical chance of it missing, so Atmosphere just playing the PP stall, playing the Math Mind games, and it'll come down to whether or not that Muddy Water goes off. But the Calm Mind on that Protect read is amazing, and no, we have Feint in the back as well. Means that Protect was probably just a one-off, and we can just see it spamming Feint, getting rid of any possible Focus Sashes. It could be there, this could be a Focus Sash version of Landorus, and it just covers every bound possible, especially with that Fake Out being burnt due to that Protect.
Yeah, I like the fake out going instead of going for a feint, because at that point too, you at least force your Pokemon into the position where they can go for, maybe just something to help kind of boost them up. Close combat though, gonna at least add some defense and special defense drops, but does a good chunk of damage to this Landorus, who goes for a substitute. So this Tapu Fini's Moonblast is not a Muddy Water, it's single target, big damage onto the Landorus, most likely just trying to break that substitute and be fully accurate, plus a critical hit as well, helps to fade that substitute, meaning that Atmosphere, I think, has enough HP for maybe one more substitute, but I don't think he was planning on losing it this turn, and that puts a bit of a damper on things.
It does put a very big damper on the situation, because yes, you can recycle those substitutes until you cannot do so anymore, but with the presence of the super strong close combat, presence of Feint, presence of a possible Taunt in the back there, it was just put in a position where Mienshao could do one thing, Tapu Fini could just keep clicking that Calm Mind, take those Sludge Bombs, take those Earth Powers, and just go for Moonblast in the end, not even have to rely on that super effective Muddy Water, which can miss and also get actually drops, but just keeping it safe with that special attack drop and the stab of the Moonblast.
Yeah, and I think that was a really, really well played game by Rey. Both games, really. I think the adjustments from game one still was absolutely insane. Rey knew that their secret to this game was keeping that Spectrier around and just keeping it as much of a problem as it could be. And the fact that even in game two, it was still able to handle an Earth power from a Sheer Force Landorus Incarnate, which, having the Sheer Force just boosts the power of those moves anyway. And it was still able to hang on just with a little bit of HP, but getting that Grenade boost, getting the nasty plots up, it just makes it such a threat. And when you can't properly deal with it because its support Pokemon are preventing you from attacking or preventing you from getting off something like a Protect just in a way that's pretty helpful, then I think at that point it becomes a bit of a problem Pokemon to deal with, a bit of a conundrum, I think, because you're like, if I get rid of the Spectrier, then they can send in something that's really good against Trick Room, and I kind of just think that Rey had Atmosphere's number for quite a lot of that game.
Yeah, Rey was just reading that game like a well-read book. Of course, having those slow modes in that Incineroar, that Tapu Fini, possibly even that Sarina if it came in the back, but not really fearing any priority moves, it didn't need to come. So having just that opportunity to go for that fast mode, we could have seen taunts, fake outs, there's anything to stop Trick Room, either of these Pokemon are likely going to carry them. Incineroar was just setting the pace there, and Tapu Fini was the icing on the cake. If your Spectre went down, there's not, it's not the end of the world, because you've still got the Calm Mind boost that can take you further with another super strong special attacker, and in doing so, Rey has then buffed the lead up to a 4-2, meaning that the Aloha Arachnids are going to have to win these next two games to even get a vision of a point, and if not, they're in their head, they're living there rent-free thinking we can just go for those two more wins and get that win over you and pretty much clean sweep the Arachnids and put their loss ratio down a bit further and give that little bit of a buff to the Strikers.
Yeah, and Sunsteel Strikers definitely loving having guaranteed points, I'm sure. Especially they've already got 2 wins on the board. They have 1 tie. I'm sure they would rather it be 3-0-1 instead of 2-0-2. But they are well on their way to doing so. 1 more Spike Myth game and 1 more Series 13 game for those 2 teams. However, we will be taking a short break. We have another great Spike Myth Cup match coming up right after this, so do not go anywhere.